Today on the Purpose-Based Retirement, why it pays to think twice before having a bank manage your investments, and how saving taxes on $150,000 could lead to paying taxes on over $1 million in retirement.
Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner practitioner Casey Weed.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Casey leads a team of financial advisors with decades of experience helping families across the country retire with the confidence they deserve. The Purpose-Based Retirement assigns every dollar you've saved a specific purpose to meet a key retirement need.
Whatever risk you faced, we've got a plan for that.
Stay tuned and learn how you can look forward to a worry-free, purpose-based retirement.
Thanks for joining us again. I'm Lee Kelso here with Casey Weed, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. We're going to begin the program today with commenting on an article in Forbes magazine that it really caught my attention. I know it did yours as well. Should you trust your bank with your investments? That's a pretty provocative question.
Yeah, my good friend Rob Russell put this article together, and I think it's something that we should really be discussing right now in the current environment we're in, because everybody is looking for convenience over quality, really. And I think that's a general theme in almost any place that we look today. People just want convenience. They want to get it done, they want to get in, they want to get out quickly, they want everything in one place. And if you're going into a bank and doing that, then you may be losing out on quality in order to have that convenience. And I think there's some things that you should really be looking out for, as I do agree with quite a few of the things that Rob actually put in this article.
Well, you know, I trust my bank for so many things. They're FDIC insured, all that kind of stuff. Is that holdover? Are my investments as safe?
Unfortunately, that's just not the case, and that is one of the reasons that a lot of folks will say, I really want to work with a big bank because my money is going to be safe that way. I won't have to worry about losing it. The reality is that you're not getting FDIC insurance on a stock or a bond, a mutual fund, or more often the variable annuities and real estate investment trusts, the high commission products that they're selling. Those are all at-risk investments. These firms were built on that, and they have layer upon layer of fees because they're still trying to build those big old buildings that we see downtown everywhere we go. The biggest buildings in town are the insurance companies and the bank buildings. They have to focus on that profit margin. You're not going to get something that's any safer or any cheaper than you can anywhere else. If you work with an independent advisor, as long as they have a third-party custodian, for instance, we work with Fidelity, sometimes TD Ameritrade. Those are places where they kind of work like a bank, right? We can put assets there and still have that FDIC coverage if we're in cash, but once we go to a security, we always lose that FDIC coverage.
So those big banks, as you put it, the big tall buildings, there are a lot of smart people there. What about the quality of advice?
Yeah.
Does that big tall building translate into good quality?
Well, having everything in one place, I think is a good discussion to start around there. If we had everything in one place, do you think we have the best of everything? This is an argument that a lot of folks have made about mutual fund managers, for instance. You'd say, well, do I want everything with American Funds or everything with MFS or everything with Vanguard? Do we think that that one place has the best growth fund manager, the best bond fund manager, the best international stock, the best small cap manager, the best real estate fund manager? Probably not, right? We want to go out and find the best of the best that might be at a different company. And I think the same thing goes true if I'm going to go buy a steak, right? If I wanted to go get a steak, I'm not going to run into Walmart and pick up a steak. I might get my ground beef there because I still have that cheap gene in me. But if I want a really good steak and I'm celebrating, I'm going to run down to Jameson's. I'm going to go down to Seven Sons or some local butcher's market where I know that I'm getting the best darn cut of meat I can possibly get because I'm celebrating and I want the best. I think it also holds true with finance and financial planning. If you want to have everything under one roof, if you want to have your investment advisor, your banker, your CPA, your attorney all in the same place, do you think that you're going to end up with the best CPA in town, the best attorney in town? That CPA and that attorney, they don't need to work with a financial advisor. If they're that good, they're going to be working completely independent on their own. This is why we set up those relationships with other individuals that can come into our office and we can have the best of the best all the time sitting down with our clients.
If you're watching the program here, you're probably a pretty sophisticated person. You understand the concept of diversification and how important that is in your portfolio. When it comes to working with a bank, am I going to get much diversification?
You're going to get a small group of whatever they're selling at the time. And typically what these are referred to as are affiliated funds. So right now, I mean, sit down if you're behind a computer, Google the company that you're working for, the bank that you're working with, or the brokerage house that you're working with, and then put revenue sharing or affiliated funds after it. So bank, then affiliated funds, bank, revenue sharing, broker, revenue sharing. And what you're going to find is that you're going to find disclosures that share with you, we are only able to sell, this subset of investment funds, mutual funds, insurance products. If you really think about a lot of these companies, they have built their revenues by only selling certain companies' products and investments. And you're going to find that their revenue sharing is typically upwards of 20% or more of what they're bringing in as net revenue. So that's why you might end up with, American Fund's growth fund instead of Vanguard's growth fund. When Vanguard's got lower expenses and better long-term growth, you're not getting the best thing because heck, that advisor doesn't even have the ability to sell that to you or put that into your portfolio. And you're typically getting A-share mutual funds, variable annuities, high expense, high fee products, and you aren't getting a true plan.
So what about the person who's advising or managing my income? Are they actually making the decisions?
Well, they're good guys. These are generally really nice individuals that have the best of intentions. It's just that they don't have the leeway to utilize the best vehicle for the job. They are told exactly what they can sell. I want to work with an advisor that when I walk into their office, they can do whatever is in my best interest. And the more money I make, the more money they make. So they better put me in the lowest cost investment because that means I'm going to grow more, I'm going to see more income out of my investments, and they're ultimately going to see more in their pocket, and that means that my goals are aligned. I want a fiduciary, someone that has the legal responsibility to put my needs ahead of their own.
So I've already got a relationship with this bank. Are they going to give me the best deal? Is there any savings to be had because I know these people that already have some of my money on deposit?
I think a lot of folks think that even works with mortgages and lines of credit. It's not always true that you're going to get lower costs by keeping everything in one place, and especially when it comes to investing, because these are profit centers for the bank. And especially when you start looking at the different costs inside of these funds that they're actually utilizing, if they're focusing on mutual funds and variable annuities, these are the most expensive vehicles that are on the market today. Take a look at the average mutual fund. We had someone coming in the other day that had everything managed by a local bank. Well, they're paying 1.2%, which wasn't too bad, but they were paying 1.2% to have that portfolio of mutual funds that were also charging over 1.5% actively managed. So we're actively managed mutual funds, layer on layer of cost, and it should have been a fraction of that with what they had been saved up over the years. And their advisor was getting the 1.2 and the bank was getting a good chunk of the rest.
Yeah, so as we showed you in the example you had on your screen just a moment ago, you had to have an 11.2% return in that example just to see 7%.
Yeah, that's what happens when we have high fees and expenses. You have to continue to reach for more yield, and that's what you have to be cautious of today because, with the interest rate being as low as it is, people are taking on greater and greater risk without even knowing it as their advisors are reaching for yields and trying to make up for these exorbitant fees.
So if we've got you thinking about exactly what your money is doing and is it working as well as it could for you, I hope you'll be one of the next 10 people to pick up the phone and give us a call at Howard Bailey Financial. The number's on your screen right now. You can request a complimentary review of exactly what's going on in your retirement and financial world. Are you paying more in fees and expenses than you should? Is your income for retirement structured efficiently? Is it going to be there when you need it? There are so many factors that you might not be understanding and not be thinking about if you're new to the concept of retirement planning and a plan for a retirement. So we hope that you're one of the next 10 people to pick up the phone and call now and book an appointment with Casey or a member of the Howard Bailey team. It's a complimentary review to find out exactly what's going on in your portfolio And are there things you can do to really set yourself up for a better life ahead? All right, we're going to be back in just a second. We'll be taking caller questions, so you stay with us.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
The highest educational achievement for a financial planner is the Certified Financial Planner certification. At Howard Bailey, all of our frontline advisors are CFP practitioners. Certified financial planners have been thoroughly vetted with the right education and experience to coach you through the complexities of your retirement. Getting to retirement, that's really the easy part. Find someone with what it takes to get you through this next stage of your life. Would your financial and retirement affairs benefit from a higher level of insight and care? Call us now to find out.
Your questions are always welcome around here. info@howardbailey.com is how you can reach us, and we might include your question on the program. That's what we're doing with Margaret in Buchanan, Michigan. Go ahead, Margaret.
I was wanting to know, is there anything to worry about with the craziness in the market so far this year, or is it all political?
Well, Margaret, I think anytime the market gets as expensive as it is right now, we need to exercise a little caution. And yes, it's absolutely political. I think a lot of things that happen in the market are typically political for that matter. But if we look at prices today, there's really nothing it could be but political in nature. If we look at the price of the S&P on a price to earnings basis at about a 20 or 22, and if we look at Shiller's PE ratio or 5 and 10-year inflation-adjusted earnings that kind of smooth out valuations, we will find we're paying about $2 to $3 million, depending on the valuation measure that you use. You're paying $2 to $3 million for a stock or a company. If you think about buying stocks as actually investing in a company, which you should, you're paying $2 to $3 million for a company that's only earning about $100,000 a year. You would never do that. Common sense individual would never do that in the real world, right? But if we look at what's happening in the market, then yeah, people are doing that, and that's largely due to what the Fed has done, what the government's done with reducing interest rates. So whenever they start talking about changing interest rates or affecting tariffs for that matter, these things are going to dramatically affect a market, especially a market that is as expensive or overvalued as it is today, putting us in one of the most expensive markets in history. We're now in the second most expensive market in history, and that is largely driven by what our government has done in the markets and the money supply and all over the world, not just here with central banks in the U.S., but central banks all over the world. We have to be concerned with them pushing valuations as high as they are, and this is why we need to put together a real plan that can succeed regardless of what direction the market takes next, and that is a real thing. But if you're only working with someone that sells investments, manages your investments, puts you in stocks and bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities, you're just getting a product salesperson, you're never going to have peace of mind that you have to have during your retirement years, and it's always going to seem just a little bit too crazy.
Hey, thanks. Good question, Margaret. Let's get up to Albion, and John, go right ahead.
We have a lot of after-tax investments that are generating 1099s, and we don't need the income. How do we eliminate this tax liability?
Well, John, thank you for your question. And one of the things you're going to have to do is start thinking about those different tax buckets. You can go out to our website, howardbailey.com, click on the Watch tab. You can watch some educational videos that I have there on the 3-4 different buckets that you have in order to keep those dollars in if they're taxable. That is taxable 1099 funds, which is what you have now, to tax deferred, to tax-free, to tax-free, and estate tax-free. So there are different types of buckets that are out there, and what you have is the more money you have, the more you want to move those funds further to the right. So we want to have them, instead of 1099, we want to be tax deferred, preferably tax free, and better yet, income tax free and estate tax free. The more money you have, the more that really matters to your bottom line. So if we talk about tax deferred funds, first you've got something that's creating a 1099, we tax shelter it, we put it in a tax qualified account. Maybe we're making an extra IRA IRA deposit, or if you're in retirement, now we have to look at non-qualified investments that are tax sheltered, non-qualified variable annuities, overfunded life insurance policies, or just shifting the way that we're investing. Instead of focusing on yield and income, we start focusing on growth and price appreciation in those funds. On the other side, we want to put them someplace that's tax-free and eliminate the 1099. Maybe we just want to make an extra Roth IRA deposit, start converting those dollars into Roth IRAs. Maybe we want to also look at other tax-free income areas like IUs, like cash value life insurance. So those are some of the things you can start to think about, is what are the vehicles I can use to reposition these dollars in order to be more tax efficient for myself and my future. And furthermore, if you don't need the funds, if you really truly don't need those funds, who are you going to leave them to someday? Maybe you want to go ahead and get those things off your balance sheet today by gifting those assets to your heirs. Maybe you don't want to give them to them yet, but you know that's where they're going. You want to set up some type of trust for that. Maybe you're charitable. You want to set those assets aside for charity. Maybe gift them to a charitable foundation. Maybe put them in a donor advised fund so that you don't have ongoing taxation. You get tax benefits today. You can re-diversify. You may not even have to choose the charity who you're going to give those things to today, but at least you get a deduction. So there's a lot of things that you can do when it comes to eliminating your 1099s, which I just love to do because I like to call those 1099s I'm telling on you forms, and I really don't like to be told on.
I like that. I'm telling on you forms. That's great. Let's get over to Don in Defiance.
We have about 60% of our portfolio invested in bond funds. How do we remain conservative while eliminating our interest rate risks?
Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get away from your broker that only sells stocks and bonds. In order to eliminate that interest rate risk, of course, one, you could move to shorter term corporate bonds or even TIPS. We have to move shorter term on those bond holdings. And one of the things you want to do is get a third-party audit, figure out how long that maturity is and how sensitive those holdings are to changes in interest rates. If you have enough in assets, which typically happens around $200,000–300,000 in investable assets, you might be able to build your own individual bond portfolio to help eliminate interest rate risk. However, you're still going to have the default risk. And if you don't have that much, you may need to look into alternative asset classes such as fixed indexed annuities or fixed annuities. You know, a 10-year investment grade bond today might pay you 2 to 4%. A 5-year fixed annuity is going to pay you, say, 3 to 4%. So you're going to get better rate of return than you are with a corporate bond without the default risk. A fixed indexed annuity, if you're willing to take some volatility, might pay 3 to 6%. Those are good alternatives to a traditional bond mutual fund. So I'd rather see that bond fund money that you have today outside of a bond fund in individual bonds if we have enough, or in fixed annuities and indexed annuities that eliminate the interest rate risk altogether. Dr. Ibbotson, a Yale economic professor, put together a study that actually showed that a stock mix with a fixed indexed annuity mix that gives you 50 to 75% of the gains in the market and locks in your gains every year would give you more growth potential and better annual rates of return than your traditional stock and bond mix. You're just going to have to work with a different type of advisor to get that job done.
And you can reach a different type of advisor by being one of the next 10 people to call now and ask for a complimentary review of your entire retirement portfolio. It's a chance to sit down with somebody who really understands the retirement process and the thoughts that have to go into making sure you have a successful retirement. One of the next 10 people, I hope you're one of the next 10 to call right now, the number on your screen, and sit down with a member of the Howard Bailey team to learn more about your money, find out about taxes and fees and retirement income, long-term planning that may not be happening if you're not working with someone who is focused on a purpose-based retirement. That's the opportunity we're offering you today, and I hope you're one of the next 10 people who'll pick up the phone. All right, our question of the day has to do with just how much money is out there that the government doesn't have its hands on yet. How much is currently saved in retirement accounts that hasn't been taxed? Casey has the answer when we come back.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
The highest educational achievement for a financial planner is the Certified Financial Planner certification. At Howard Bailey, all of our frontline advisors are CFP practitioners. Certified financial planners have been thoroughly vetted with the right education and experience to coach coach you through the complexities of your retirement. Getting to retirement, that's really the easy part. Find someone with what it takes to get you through this next stage of your life. Would your financial and retirement affairs benefit from a higher level of insight and care? Call us now to find out.
It is a big number, right? We asked you going into the break a question about how much money is out there in retirement funds that has not been taxed. Is it thousands, millions, billions, or trillions? Casey, which is correct?
Well, unfortunately, actually, it's trillions of dollars. That's D. There's trillions of dollars out there today that have yet to be taxed. And sitting on about $20 trillion in U.S. national debt, you can bet that there's somebody out there that sees a big target on the back of your IRAs and 401ks because they've never been taxed. There's over $25 trillion in retirement accounts out there. That could, again, wipe away about half of our U.S. national debt overnight if it were to be taxed. And this is why you have to realize that if you own an IRA or a 401k, you need to start doing some tax planning, and I'm going to explain this to you by starting a little example. So how does saving tax on $155,000 of income lead to paying taxes on over $1 million? I'm going to share with you exactly how that might happen. So one of the questions I often ask whenever I do a public event is, do you think taxes will go down in the future? And I always get the same response. Everybody seems to think taxes will go up in the future. And this is something that we have to be prepared for, especially if you're either a long ways from retirement or you're going to pass your retirement accounts on to somebody in the future, maybe your children or grandchildren. So let's say every year you're 35 years old, you start taking out $5,000 from every paycheck. Maybe you're making $50,000 a year, you're saving 10% of your paycheck every year, $5,000 a year. And if you're like most individuals, you're not getting much of any match. So you're putting away $5,000 a year, and let's say it's growing at 7% per year for the next 30 years. By the time you get to age 65, that will have grown to almost $530,000, which is a pretty large sum of money. Now, you might think, well, I've got 500,000. You might say, I've got $1 million in my 401k. Now I'm a millionaire. The reality is that Uncle Sam hasn't been paid yet. Now we've deposited over $155,000 into this account in order to turn it into over $500,000. But now they retire. Those IRAs are going to continue to grow from $528 all the way up to $650,000 by the time they get to 70 and a half. Now what happens when we turn 70? Well, now the IRS comes by, they knock on the door and say, hey, I really need some of that money. And they really do need some of those funds because you have a partnership, an unfortunate partnership with Uncle Sam, which is eventually going to force you to start taking distributions and paying taxes on those required minimum distributions to the tune of about $23,000 a year for this $650,000 account. Let's say we get a little bit more conservative in retirement, and now we're making 5% per year. As we age, we're going to continue to take larger and larger distributions. By the time we're 85, that distribution is about doubled to $43,000. And over that retirement period, about 15 years only, required minimum distributions have totaled $530,000. And there's $630,000 left in the IRA to be left behind for the next generation. So we're going to be taxed on $1.1 million by the time we get to the end. Let's break this down by how much taxes were paid at these three different stages. During the accumulation years, there were total deposits of $155,000, and you're going, yes, I don't have to pay taxes on these dollars each and every year, and you saved $46,000 in taxes. During those distribution years, just assuming required distributions are taking, you'll take $530,000 out and pay taxes of $130,000. This is assuming a 25% tax rate versus a 30% tax rate while you're working, assuming we're counting federal, state, local taxes. And when you pass on, we're leaving behind $645 for the next generation, assuming they're going to be in a 30% tax rate as well, probably a higher tax rate than you will be during your retirement years. And that will have taxes totaling over $190,000. So we saved $46,500 in taxes in order to ultimately pay $270,000+ in taxes in the future. Now, let's talk about the problems with IRAs beyond just what we see here. As we can already see, when we start taking distributions from those IRAs, they're going to be taxed as ordinary income, not going to be taxed as capital gains or dividends. We might also be pushed into a higher tax bracket as we begin to take those distributions, and that could also lead to paying more taxes on your Social Security income as well. And this could also affect your capital gains taxes. If you are in the 10-12% brackets today, you're effectively going to pay 0% of your long-term capital gains taxes. If you are having to take required distributions, you may be pushed into paying 15%, 20%, maybe as high as 23.8% on your capital gains, as well as even maybe paying more dollars on your Medicare in the future. Required minimum distributions come from IRAs and 401ks, so it's the only account you will put money into where you're forced to take distributions, and many of the individuals we meet with don't need those distributions. Now, once you get them, you have to find someplace else to put those distributions where you're not going to be continually taxed via 1099. And when you leave those assets behind, your legacy is going to be taxed as well. So how can the new tax code help? If we compare the old tax code to the new tax code, what we're going to find is that 15% bracket has went down to 12%. That may not seem like much, but let's put it in perspective. At a 3% drop, that's a 20% effective reduction in the amount of taxes you're going to have to pay every single year. The 25% bracket has become 22. Eliminated altogether, the 28 has become 24. We can have up to $315,000 in taxable income and still be in the 24% tax bracket. We used to only have to have $76,000 to be in the 25% bracket. One of the potential solutions is to take that IRA and convert it to a Roth IRA, the benefits of which are, one, tax-free distribution. One of the things that my ancestors have often said is we pay the taxes on the seed so that it can grow tax-free, and we can harvest the crop tax-free. We have immediate access to those funds if we're over the age of 59 and a half. If we have to turn 71 or 72, which we will at some point in our lives, we have no required minimum distributions, and we can leave that Roth IRA tax-free to the next generation rather than taxable like that traditional IRA will be.
So the Roth IRA, what a great invention. Is it at risk, do you think?
It is probably at risk at some point in the future of something like required minimum distributions. That's been on the chopping block in the past. But typically, anytime there's been a major tax change, it has been sunsetted. But this is another reason we really recommend that you diversify your tax buckets. There are other places that we can go for tax-free income and retirement. I would like to see us have multiple places that we can hit for different types of taxable, tax-free, tax-deferred income in retirement, so we have flexibility that can give us policy diversification, not just tax diversification. Just like you diversify your investments, diversify your tax buckets to give us as much flexibility as possible and ultimately building that retirement income plan and keeping those taxes at a minimum.
I hope you're going to be one of the next 10 people who will get on the phone and request a complimentary review of what's going on in your entire retirement plan right now and learn more about the tax implications of how your investments are structured today and how that could affect you going forward. That's an important decision, one of many they'll cover as you sit down with a member of the Howard Bailey team, either Casey or another one of the qualified professionals there, to learn about your money so you can make the best decision possible for yourself and your family going forward. Be one of the next 10 people to pick up the phone and request that complimentary review. It's a step forward for your future that I hope you'll take. And I hope you'll be watching next week as we come back once again to teach you more about how you can have a purpose-based retirement. We'll see you then.